Mia Hughes, people have called for a blood hunt against you and Genspect, and why are these people calling for a blood hunt against you and Genspect?
It's so in at the end of September, I gave a talk at the Genspect conference in Albuquerque, where it was a very thoughtful, very well researched talk where I framed being transgender as a sign of mental illness, or people who identify as transgender and pursue radical hormonal and surgical body modification in the service of that identity. I framed that in a new way as a type of mental illness. And along with that, Genspect, the organization that I'm the director of, Genspect Canada, there's an international organization as well. We launched a campaign called Repsychopathologization, and that just sent Blue Sky into complete meltdown. This started with a Harvard Law School instructor who did a post. He has an enormous following. He identifies as a woman, and he has an enormous following. And he put on there, he called us an anti-trans hate group, said that we were formally calling for trans-identified people to be institutionalized and calling for conversion therapy. Absolutely not a word of what he said was true. But then that triggered just this unbelievable wave of outrage from people on Blue Sky calling for us to be shot, calling for a blood hunt, calling for our eyeballs to be collected.
Blood hunt. Love that. No one's going to blood hunt Reed. He's been working on his jiu-jitsu game, combat training. A blood hunt. So this person teaches, of course, every time I hear the word Harvard, I associate it with just a joke. So this person, what does this person teach now?
His specialty, so he's in the law school, and his specialty, honestly, is detecting online hate and discrimination against the LGBTQ. And
you just can't make it up, can you?
You can't. And honestly, he is really, truly, he spreads more misinformation than probably, well, he's one of the leading trans activists spreading lies and misinformation about those of us on this side of the debate who are just calling for caution, a non-medical approach, more evidence, and calling for better care for trans-identified people. And this guy just frames it as anti-trans hate and then whips up this fury and these, the Blue Sky little minions that are calling for blood hunts.
There he is right there.
Yes, there he is. He's an interesting fellow.
Little top heavy. So this person is basically spreading disinformation.
Yes.
And the person who called, so many people, not just the blood hunt, but there are many calls for violence against you. Have there been any subsequent engagement of your ideas? Like, is this individual published a rebuttal in a peer-reviewed journal saying what's wrong with your argument? Or does this individual challenge you to a debate?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, as far as I can tell, all he did was read one statement that went out the day of my talk, leapt to wild conclusions, all of them wrong, and then that's it. I don't think he's engaged at all with my new framing of this as it's called an extreme overvalued belief. It is a concept well established in psychiatry, but it's very obscure. And so he leapt to the conclusion that because the extreme overvalued belief can be used in forensic psychiatry to analyze mass murder or assassins or these acts of extreme violence, he just made the leap that I was saying all transgender people are therefore mass murderers and terrorists. And if this is the caliber of person that they're employing at Harvard, Goodness me.
Well, it's because he's that caliber of person that he's at Harvard,
Yeah.
right? Because it's okay. So okay, so we have a lot of things going on. We have the disinformation, the blood hunt. We have the SPLC, which is completely ideologically captured, a disgraceful organization, a joke of an organization. And I'm so happy we have Grokpedia now. But let's talk to me about the SPLC.
Yeah, so a lot of Caraballo and his minions, you'll see them in the replies saying, "Oh, Genspect is a hate group." The SPLC said Genspect's a hate group, and that's that I think we earned that designation in 2023. So the Southern Poverty Law Center, as with many an organization, I suppose, was once a force for good in the world, and then got corrupted by transactivism, identity politics, and skewed to the far left. And so we earned our hate group designation simply. Let's be clear what Genspect is. It's an organization that advocates for a non-medical approach to gender-related distress. It's not, no one's out there calling for the extermination of the entire trans population. Nobody's out there calling for hate in any way whatsoever. But the Southern Poverty Law Center, their definition now of hate is so broad that it encompasses everyone who doesn't rigidly agree with their hard left political stance. And so I think the definition even says you don't actually have to be actively spreading hate, inciting hate. You just have to be deemed to be spreading bigotry, and bigotry to them is saying, well, it's not right to chop the healthy breasts off a 16-year-old lesbian. That to them is hate. And so Caraballo and all of those little minions on Blue Sky are just, they're believing that we're a hate group with there's no grounding whatsoever.
It truly is the iron law of woke projection. They are 100% always inevitably guilty of what they accuse others of doing. They are a hate group. Oh, and thanks, Mushy Seasoned Coffee for Reed. We appreciate that. And once we get a little more money in their coffer, we're going to get Reed a butt baby for his Christmas present.
God.
We have it printed out. I have it on gift. I'm going to wrap it and everything. It's going to be so nice when he gives birth to that. It's going to be really quite something. If anybody's wondering what that's about, you can watch my last conversation with Reed, with Mia. Reed's dying over there. And the background, by the way, is a real background. This is a real. It's not a fake background.
It does look like a fake background.
It is, but it's nice. I can walk over to it, and it really is. We'll see some Canadians out there pretty soon. Okay, so Miss Hughes, I'm sure there's a lot of things going on here, but let's slow down a little bit. And you talked some about Genspect. What is the goal? The goal is to advocate for non-medical interventions for people who have gender distress. And I, as you know, I'm recently agreed to the role of a board of advisors for Genspect, because I think they're a fantastic organization doing really, really interesting work. And I would invite all of these people who don't like your talk or who disagree with anything you've said, either to come on stage at the next, and I'll give this individual a free ticket. They can come on stage and they can have that conversation with me. I'm more than happy to facilitate a conversation. Or I think that they should do what people have done for years. If they disagree with anything you say, they should publish it in a peer-reviewed journal, and then we can have that conversation in a more robust intellectual way. So tell us about Genspect. Why? So you're Genspect Canada now as well, right? Tell us about how that's going.
Oh, well, so the situation in Canada is rather grim. I'm the director of Genspect Canada. We're years and years behind the rest of the world in that just making no progress at all. Well, we have the province of Alberta that has made some effort to put a stop to this medical scandal, but then there's groups that are trying to overturn it in the legal setting. But Genspect, so Genspect International, and we launched, what I'd like to talk about is this policy statement that we launched that is based on my talk in Albuquerque and also based on the initial repsychopathologization statement that we released that caused all of this storm. And so really all we are trying to do is bring clinical clarity to the field of gender medicine, which has been completely guided by ideology and by the most incoherent, baffling ideology that's ever been invented by the human mind, as far as I'm concerned. And that is they've been treating a type of person that doesn't exist, is the way I see it, in that the entire field of gender affirming care has been treating transgender people as if this is a type of person, as if this is just a normal, healthy variation of human existence that just so happens to need lifelong medical intervention in the form of drastic hormones and surgeries. That's incoherent. It makes no sense whatsoever. And it all stems from the group that I'm always talking about, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, or WPATH. So we are trying to bring clarity to the confusion that WPATH has spread in the field of gender medicine. We're trying to guide clinicians, therapists, anyone who finds themselves treating this cohort, this very diverse cohort of patients, help them understand what it is that they're dealing with. And so I had, for years, my thinking begins basically, I did an interview with Andrew Gold a couple of years ago.
He's great. He's a very good friend of mine.
He's great. Yeah, I love him. And I said in the interview rather bluntly, trans is a mental illness. And that's how he put it on YouTube. That was the caption, trans is a mental illness. And a whole bunch of people came at me who I respect on my own side, so-called, and called me out on that, saying, what do you mean? What kind of mental illness is it? And I took 2 years to figure out what I meant by that, because there's different types of mental illness and trans didn't fit into any of them. You know, there's delusions where a person is psychotic, but delusions are bizarre and individually held, and they're not shareable, and nobody around you believes, that aliens are communicating through the radio, that kind of level. So it didn't fit in there. It didn't fit into obsessions, because an obsession is it's an intrusive thought that the individual finds really distressing and disturbing, and then they have these compulsive behaviors to try and alleviate that distress. So it didn't fit in there. And then I came across this concept of the overvalued idea, and it's just the person is completely sane. They're not in any way delusional or psychotic or obsessive, but they're just, this one idea has overtaken their sense of self, overtaken their whole self, and is driving some kind of pathological behavior. In the case of trans, it is driving the desire to have healthy body parts chopped off. It's driving the desire to destroy your endocrine system with all of these powerful hormones. And so I framed it that way in my talk, and that's how we're framing it in our clinical guidelines, our policy statement. And I thought I was framing it in the most thoughtful, most nuanced, most compassionate way I have in all these years, and everyone lost their mind.
It's interesting. So I have I think I've mentioned before, I have a very good friend who's an autogonophile, and he self-describes as trans. And are you having your tea?
Of course, always.
You can take the woman out of the island, but you can't take the island out of the woman, or the culture, the tea culture. So I'm having some water and some coffee. So anyway, I was thinking that because switching to green tea is supposed to be quite good. I've been thinking about that. Anyway, so my friend who is trans, he doesn't want to have any of his body parts chopped off, but he just dresses like a woman. He has intimate relations as if he's a woman, but he doesn't want to access women's spaces. He doesn't want to chop off any body parts. He's absolutely against medicalization of children. Like, what would you say to that?
This is we in our policy we've drawn a very clear clinical threshold, and that is when it drives the pathological pursuit of dangerous, drastic medical interventions. So I think I would like to, we're in the process of perhaps adding a subclinical threshold, which is the social transition, the change of name and pronouns, the wearing of the binders and stuff with these kids, because there's danger there when a young person strays into that territory. There is danger that it can become pathological, but I think we're being very specific in that the clinical threshold is when it overtakes your whole sense of self, and you believe that your mind is healthy, you believe that your identity is healthy, and you believe that your body needs to be fixed, because that's the wrong framing. This is an issue of the mind, and trans activists will certainly say that this drastic medical pathway is life-saving and less than 1% regret rate and all of the rest of it. So I can definitely see why there's so much pushback, because if you believe those studies, like, it's absurd. We've talked about this in one of the many conversations that we've had, that, you know, there's a systematic review out there, or there's a meta review out there of all the regret literature. And it honestly, I think it says less than 1% regret rate for the arm flesh appendage sewn onto the woman's groin. Now, it's impossible that there would be less than 1% regret on such a drastic, pointless surgery that has complication rates, astronomically high complication rates. So the regret literature is not accurate. We just know that there are harms. All of the interventions are not all of the interventions.
We're laughing at the thumbnail that
That's
our
my
buddy made for you.
catchphrase. Yeah.
Arm flesh appendages. I love how it's like red and in blood and stuff.
I know, it's hilarious. So that's the thing. Like, that doesn't restore health. If a woman has her forearm stripped and the flesh turned into some kind of appendage sewn onto her groin that is non-functional, it's just there. That's not restoring her health, and it's certainly, I don't think that's solving
really?
the issues that she's got going on in her life. How is that going to help? And so we are saying that if it's very clear that if you think your identity is healthy and you think your body needs to be fixed and you pursue these radical interventions, that's a pathological condition, and it needs to be taken seriously by everybody in the field of gender affirming, well, no, forget gender affirming care. That all needs to be abolished. And in the field that is helping these individuals who are basically just caught up in this mad cultural moment, it's a culture-bound syndrome. It's sucked in all of these vulnerable people, and they're making very drastic medical decisions based on a false belief. And the people treating them need to understand what it is they're dealing with. And then, well, there's that essay, I think you shared it with me. It's a detransitioned man, Ariel.
Yeah, he came to my talk at UW in Washington, and it was, I mean, what an unbelievably nice human being. And he had bottom surgery, and he was there with his girlfriend, and he has no, I'm trying to think of, how to say this. He had bottom surgery, so he has no penis and testicles.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now he's, and he was, talking to people about it, and he was telling me he was pelted with eggs. He was pelted with eggs because he made a horrific mistake, and he wanted to alert people. Just this idea that you always need to validate. You always need to say, yes, yes, you are this. Yes, we support you. Yes, instead of, oh, really? So he saw the content that Billboard Chris and I did, and it changed his life. And it was completely blown away. And talking to this guy, he's so sincere, and he's so I mean, what happened to him is mortifying. Oh, which, by the way, made me think about our conversation about under 18, over 18. So I was deeply affected by that conversation, and I was deeply affected by meeting him. And, frankly, a little emotional, but frankly, I was tearing up a few times in those conversations with him. And we went out to dinner afterwards with a few people and his girlfriend, and clearly he is not doing well. Well, I mean, if I didn't have a penis or testicles, I wouldn't be doing well either. But he's not doing well in addition to the trauma and the hormones and estrogen and all of the other conditions that he faced. So, yep.
Yeah, so the reason I brought him up is because that essay, to me, it's a classic case of the extreme overvalued belief. The way he talks about his experience, so these beliefs, the way that they become all consuming is because you immerse yourself in a culture that shares the belief, which is, well, for him it would have been just wider society. We're all in this mad era of trans rights. But you have to kind of shut down, and you don't let in any opposing viewpoints, you don't let in any diversity of opinion. Correct. And you just live in this rigid world. And that's what he was describing. When he was trans, he believed himself to be a different type of person, this whole new kind of human being. He believed himself to be a woman. He believed that he needed his penis chopped off. He believed he needed estrogen, and there were no countervailing.
Sorry to interrupt you. He actually, not only did he believe, he got in a plane and he went to Thailand, he told me, for the surgery. Which and it means to interrupt you, but the reason I mention that is because even if you solve this problem here, and here is, specifically the one you did with, let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at this read. Just play this just for a second.
All right. Excellent. It's Ari here at Billboard. Chris,
how's it going?
It's wonderful to meet you finally. I wanted to say thank you. Just over 2 years ago, one of your videos, specifically the one you did with James Klug and Peter Boghossian over on the Portland State University, that was a video that really got me to open up and started to listen to other people. And because of people like you talking about this issue in ways that I was kind of insulated from, in kind of like a bubble, that allowed me to let go of a transgender identity and detransition.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
But this is the really important point that I want to make, though, is the fact that it's arguably too late in the sense that he went all the way medically, but he still probably has more peace because he's finally let go of a false identity, and he's on his way to recovering as best he can. But that's the importance of talking about this issue. I know a lot of people are like, why do you keep going on and on about it? Why not talk about something else? But he grew up in a society that forbid any countervailing perspectives from being discussed. Correct. And that is what led him all the way down that medical pathway, believing himself to be this type of human 100%. Being that doesn't exist. So it's possible that the more we talk about it in a respectful, compassionate way, the more individuals we're going to reach before they take such drastic measures. And at the same time, Genspect wants to inject clarity into the field of, I don't know what we would call it, but the field that is treating these individuals, so that they can also recognize that this is a false belief. Transgender people, it's not an innate type variation of human existence, and that they have been all consumed by this belief, and that what they need is the countervailing perspectives. This concept was outlined, it was first described in 1892 by a German psychiatrist called Karl Wernicke, and he said you can only become all consumed by this belief if you don't have those countervailing perspectives. And the way out of it, the way to lessen the grip of this belief, is to introduce those opposing ideas. So the way I see it is this framing of it is, it's a positive framing, because it's not saying you are psychotic, you belong in a mental institution, and there's no hope for you whatsoever. It's saying you are perfectly sane, but society is mad, and you have got swept up in something mad, and you have internalized this one crazy belief that is loose in our culture, and all they need to do is let go of that belief, and then they can return to good health, and they don't have to destroy their bodies. I think it's a really powerful, compassionate framing that should be seen in a positive light.
Yeah, I just want to say something that's really important, because I know that maybe even many people are watching this at this point, and they're saying to themselves, well, listen, if this person was foolish enough to do something so ghastly, they deserve it. Screw them. And I just think, like, after meeting this guy and talking to detransitioners, we were in Portugal at the Genspect and engaging these people, they were systematically deceived by a whole, like, everyone's, the far left and identitarians are constantly talking about systems. Well, this is actually a system. They were systematically deceived by a whole system, by people in white coats, by people they trusted, but because those people themselves were indoctrinated. The whole thing is ideologically captured. But every time you say that to someone, they make you seem like a conspiracy theorist. Go ahead. What were we going to say?
That's the other part that I should mention. So I never place the blame on the victims. You can't blame the victims. And particularly think about what the era that they've come of age, like in their schools, this idea is pushed as if it's scientific fact that this new type of human being exists. In the media, they've got all of these celebrities being celebrated. Governments are enshrining it in law. And then the most dangerous part is there's an entire field of medicine, the gender affirming field of medicine. All of the people, the clinicians and the therapists and everyone inside that field of medicine are also captured completely by this false belief. And they are, when these kids walk through the door, they don't see a young person who's vulnerable and distressed and in need of help and in need of, bringing back into the real world and the reality of their sex body. They see this type of person that doesn't exist. They see a transgender person, and they see that the only way to help this person is to give them hormones and surgeries, because any attempt to ground them in truth, any attempt to work through why they might have come to this bizarre conclusion is considered conversion therapy, which brings us back to that Caraballo guy from Harvard who actually said Genspect is calling for conversion therapy. This entire world that these kids are getting sucked into genuinely truly believes that helping a person reconcile with their body, helping them avert the need for lifelong medical intervention, they think it's conversion therapy. So the kids don't stand a chance.
Yeah, it's crazy. A comment from Robert Anderson. Until psychiatry stands up and says we were wrong, they are hopelessly corrupt and cannot be part of the solution. Well, I have news for you, Robert. You're correct, and I'm deeply sorry to say that is literally never going to happen. At least not in the next 10 years it's going to happen. They're never going to say, we're sorry, we made a mistake, we're wrong. Has anybody said it so far from any institute? No, the surgeons aren't going to say it. Nobody's going to say it. So while I agree with you, Robert, you need a stiff drink, because it's not going to happen.
I wonder if that's a slight criticism of my saying we need this psychiatric concept, though. Is that, do you think, what he's saying? Because, I understand, I think the entire field of gender affirming mental health and medical care we can't involve them in the solution. They've completely discredited themselves, and every single one of them needs to lose whatever license that they have.
Yes, licensure gone. That's why I keep saying the entire institutions need to be burned to the ground. They're just completely, indelibly, unimpeachably, they're just totally corrupt.
I agree too, but at the same time, we still have a cohort of people who believe themselves to be a kind of human being that doesn't exist, who are we have two choices. I think you can leave them to fend for themselves, and then they're just going to wander over to the field that is fully captured by this completely mad idea, or you can try and set something up that is sane, that has clinical clarity, that
but not with these people.
Definitely not with the gender affirming lunatics over
Right.
there. You need a whole new field that has no medicalization, that is not pushing these kids into drastic body modification, but that understanding of the cultural moment. This isn't going away. We could just say, okay, well, let's ban gender medicine, all of it, and then it's over. But that doesn't there's no understanding there of the power of this idea that has been loose in our culture for decades, that has captured the minds of entire populations. That's not going to go away anytime soon, and we need to find a way to help
No, you're
all of
right.
the vulnerable people who have been swept up in it.
You're right. And that's one part of it. And the other part is the wholesale organizational institutional capture, as Robert Anderson correctly points out. That is a different kind of problem. And that's causing a legitimacy crisis in our institutions. We just don't trust our institutions because they're not worthy of our trust. So we have multiple problems. And you're right. I mean, we do have people who are in need. I mean, remember that the solution, the problem you're talking about is downstream from the institution. So the people in the institutions were largely a primary contributory factor to that.
I said in our last interview, all these institutions, certainly with gender medicine, in the field of gender medicine, they've got a golden opportunity, and it's still open to them to just throw WPATH under the bus because they are the ones who, yeah, but I think
Because
that's
that
the
would mean they
easiest
made a
option.
mistake.
They made
Because
a
that would mean
mistake
they made a
trusting
mistake.
WPATH, though.
Right, but
And
they
they can
can't
just
admit they made a mistake.
at some point they have to, though.
Maybe at Tuskegee they did.
Yeah, you see, I always look at multiple personality disorder and the recovered memory movement, and it's really interesting because they had their own WPATH, the ISS, MP, and D, and they had a whole, like, all the lunatics got together every year and they shared their crackpot ideas, and then they went off and ruined lives, exactly like WPATH. And when that one collapsed in an avalanche of lawsuits, psychiatry just swept it under the carpet. Okay, we're never going to talk about that again. Let's forget about it. And you think about it, I'm one of the only people that ever talks about it in this day and age. I never stop going on about it, but a lot of people don't even know that it happened. I think that that's what they're going to try and do with this. We shouldn't let them.
Yeah, we shouldn't let them. They've discredited themselves. They're professional disgraces. They should all lose licensure, and they should really get on their knees and thank God, whatever God they believe in, that I am not the dictator of this country, because they would never see the outside of a prison again, including all the hospital administrators who contributed to this. Okay, so a couple of things. If anybody wants us to ask a super chat, they're more than welcome to do so. I wanted to talk a little bit about your talk. Again, I realize this is a huge kind of a thing, but your talk at Genspect. Can you give us the 2 to 3 minute version of that? If that's
Ooh,
okay.
okay. I'll try.
Okay,
So,
it's big. I know.
Yes, the talk at Genspect, what I conveyed in that talk was, it was a historical arc from what the title, I think, was the battle upstream, the false idea driving medical harm. So I was saying that all the efforts to protect people right now are happening downstream. We're pulling injured bodies out of the water, we're pulling injured people out of the river, but we're not tackling what's causing all of these people to fall into the river in the first place. And that's the false belief that being trans is natural, innate, and healthy. All these kids, all these people are identifying as trans. And I trace that to WPATH, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. They built all of trans activism is built on this idea of de-psychopathologization, which means they just, at the start of trans activism, they just decided that they didn't want trans to be a mental illness. They didn't want it to be a paraphilia. They didn't like the stigma, so they just redefined it. And that opened up that opened the doors to mass medicalization for anyone who adopts this healthy identity. I was saying that's the monster upstream. That's what we need to tackle. And then I brought in this, framing it as an extreme overvalued belief, which I've already talked about, in that this is an
Exactly.
all-consuming belief, and that is what we are dealing with. There's your monster. And then I suggested that we needed to, so I did draw a comparison, and I think this might be part of what's got even people on my side have been a little bit unsure about this extreme overvalued belief, because in my talk, it is used in forensic psychiatry, and it is used to analyze the mass shooters. And it's the point, the parallel I was drawing is these mass shooters, assassins, terrorists even, they're all in a subculture, and they all have extreme beliefs that they are sharing within their culture or subculture, and then every once in a while somebody acts upon it. Somebody becomes so completely all consumed by this extreme belief, whether it's white supremacy or I don't know what that Norwegian guy had some crazy beliefs. They act upon it because they think that they are ridding the world of some kind of evil, or they're ridding the world of the I don't know, religion that they dislike. I'm not saying, I in my talk I tried to make it very clear that I was not saying that trans-identified people are in any way violent or in any way
Correct.
going to commit extreme acts of violence. But it's the same idea, it's the same framework, it's the same pattern. The individual falls into an online echo chamber, an online subculture, and it doesn't even have to actually be online for trans, because the entire world until very recently certainly was an echo chamber in with trans activism and gender identity ideology. But that,
And they have the universities too.
Universities, exactly, all of it, everywhere, this belief is being pushed, and these individuals in a state of vulnerability, in a state of extreme vulnerability, they just become all consumed by this idea. And then when it can either be violence against other people in the case of mass shooters, or I was framing it as violence against your own body, because those arm flesh appendages that do not restore health in any way, that is violence against a mentally ill woman's body. Mastectomies for no reason on teenage girls, that's violence against a teenage girl who needed help. And so I paralleled it with mass shooters, because I gave the audience, the wider audience, I think everybody in the room, I would hope, understood what I was saying, but I gave the wider audience credit to understand that there's nuance. Yeah, an arm flesh appendage. Tell me that's not violence against a mentally ill woman. How you haven't helped her in any way. You haven't helped her with her mental health issues. You've destroyed her health. And for what? It's also pointless. And so my call at the end.
Okay.
Ooh, I hear myself. Are you playing
That's
my?
okay. Sorry about that. Don't Reed's, just ignore Reed. Anytime there's a problem, it's always Reed's fault, which is actually always true. If things are going well, that's me.
Yeah, so my call was just basically, we've got to stop just pulling injured bodies out of the river, go upstream and look at what is causing all of this harm and address the false belief. And the thing is as well, I'm not saying that trans-identified people don't exist. I'm not calling for them to be wiped off the face of the planet. Without this false belief, this group of people will still exist, but they will understand themselves better, and the doctors treating them will understand their patients better, and everybody will be able to see more clearly what is going on with these individuals, and then everyone will be able to make better medical decisions rather than leaping into the river without understanding what it is that's driving them to do so.
Okay, so we could have a massive conversation about this. We could have a conversation about people who are quote unquote on your side, or make normally reasonable bedfellows have kind of lost their minds at this point. That's another conversation that we could have. But I just very briefly wanted to talk about a deranged debate you had with a man in Canada. And that was particularly crazy. And Reed will pull up a clip of that here. Could you just give us a little background on this gentleman and how this talk came to be?
Yeah, look at that. I learned from this debate that I do not have a poker face. If I'm going to do this kind of thing, I need to work on keeping my face a little straight, less expressive. So it's in a university, Wilfrid Laurier University in Ontario. And the gentleman sat next to me, his name is Morgan Auger, and he lives in British Columbia, and he identifies as a woman, and he's very prominent, or he was, I don't know how prominent he is now. He's a trans activist with, it's kind of like, look, the two of us are sat next to each other, but we live in different worlds. We live on different planets, basically. So to call it a debate would be a stretch. In fact, it was never actually meant to be a debate. It was framed as a dialogue, but to call it, that's me, to call it a dialogue is even a stretch. So we had agreed on the topic that it would be gender identity, evidence, and impact. We were supposed to show up at the university and discuss the impact of the concept of gender identity in Canadian law. And so I wrote a 10-minute opening statement on the topic. That's what I showed up to talk about. And then he wrote a 10-minute opening statement just attacking me and all kinds of wild accusations, complete distortions of everything I believe. And then from that moment on, it was chaotic, it was befuddling, and it was confusing. And I never really understood what he was trying to say. I rarely got a chance to speak, but still, even though it wasn't an ideal debate setting, the very fact that that happened in Canada is remarkable. The very fact that the two of us sat together in a Canadian university and had something of a conversation. But in the week running up, I did have to take legal advice from the Free Speech Union of Canada, because
Lawrence Cross runs that, correct?
That's right. Yes. Thank goodness for that organization, because this individual was just constantly suggesting, that I review my remarks to make sure that I'm not committing hate speech, or to make sure that I'm not discrimination under the Human Rights Act and all of this stuff. And so the whole point of what I was saying in my opening statement, and what I would have said if I'd had chance to really go into the issue, is that's precisely the problem with trans activism and gender identity being protected in law, is that it demands that everyone believe, and it infringes on your right to freedom of belief, which includes the freedom not to believe. And therefore, the fact that I don't believe that he's a woman is framed as discrimination. That's the problem, because it's my right not to believe that a man is a woman just because he says so.
And you were told that you could be in violation of hate speech laws, and those, is that criminal or civil? It's criminal, isn't it?
Hate speech is criminal, and then the human rights. So there were two accusations, basically, and I think it's even after the event, he's rather active on Facebook, and people have been sending me posts that he's put up there suggesting that yes, my speech during the event was hate speech. I don't think he has a very good understanding of the law. I'm not concerned. I don't believe for a moment that anything I said strayed into actual criminal hate speech. The human rights tribunals, it's all very corrupt here. The human rights, it's provincial. There is a federal as well, but they are extremely ideologically slanted, and so it remains to be seen whether anything comes. I expect there probably will be a complaint, because I did say things like, I don't believe in gender identities. I don't believe that men are women. I think I may have even said to him that I don't believe he's a woman. It's completely ridiculous. But it takes time. We'll see. Like months will elapse before I even know if there has been a complaint, and then can take a long time before it actually, the hearing takes place.
I just want to be very clear about something that's obvious to you, but may not be obvious to many of the viewers, is that in the United States, we have a First Amendment. You do not have a First Amendment.
We
And
do
it's
not.
no. Well, I've always been a strong advocate that we should give our Constitution to the whole world for free, and anybody can adopt it. You will give it to your people, civilize you, not a problem, free of charge. So it is a very unusual thing to challenge, to be in a debate with someone and demand the person has to watch what they say because of hate speech, because they could find themselves in criminal proceedings, which runs contrary to the whole debate, the whole idea of debate. But Reed, blow up her thing on screen so that we only see me and not my mug. So you have something behind you there on the shelf, and apropos of the conversation and your debate, I was hoping that you could explain to viewers what this is, because it's utterly extraordinary.
So after, we had the event together. It's on the shelf there. It's a bar of soap that I was given as a gift. So we did this debate, discussion, event, whatever, and then we went out for drinks afterwards. All of us in the spirit of the event. This is, nobody was well, I think I was insulted a few times, and he probably feels he was as well. But we went out for a drink afterwards, and he gave me a gift of a bar of soap to wash my mouth out with. And there it is on my shelf.
That was quite a gift.
Yeah. Well, I like dark humor, so that's why it's on my shelf.
Well, that's how did you handle that? With a plum?
Well, I mean, I laughed. It's to me, it's funny because nothing
the only
that
way to take it.
Of course, it's funny. Nothing that I say is hateful, and I went into it knowing that there was risk. I didn't go into this event thinking that nothing would come of it. I went into it knowing that there was a possibility that something would come of it, but someone has to do it. If you can't in a university have a discussion about an issue that affects the entire nation, like everybody
did, and we know we can't.
But we have to, and so somebody has to do it, which is why I went into it. And I still, of course, everything I said, everything I've ever said, I can easily defend and will defend. So I'd rather not. I'd rather nothing come of it. There was a strange moment in the debate, or in the event, when everybody lined up to ask questions. And one woman who was there, a friend of Morgan, the man in the event, she described herself as a male presenting lesbian. So she was a very butch lesbian, and she was all like Antifa. She had all kinds of like trans activist symbols. And she did a long talk about how difficult her life has been and how she'd been suicidal, and then started shouting at me for my use of, there she is, for my use of language. But because I was saying things like chopping body parts off, and she's like, how dare you use that language? How do you think that makes me feel? And, I thought, what are you doing at a debate? A debate is clearly, you're going to hear two sides of an argument. You're going to hear your friend's side, which you obviously agree with, and then you're going to hear the other side, which you're probably going to find offensive, because that's what this is. This is a debate. And then she felt she had the right to shout at me, which she did not.
Well, I have to say I'm sorry you had to endure that. I think the way your posture toward the bar of soap, putting it there, I think that was terrific. I think that's the only posture we can take. All right, we are closing in on time. Does anybody have any questions for me? If you do, this is an opportunity. If not, then that's okay too. Mia, you're a favorite on the channel.
Oh, that's lovely.
People
I've been
love
on
you
a
every
lot.
time you come on there. Yes.
There's lots of me on your channel.
There certainly is. And Reed and I are thinking of going to Canada in the summer because it's nice and, it's not frigid up there.
It's not in summer. It's not. Well, that would be lovely. Canada needs you and Reed for sure.
Thank you. We'll bring. I'm almost hesitant to say this in the same sentence, but We'll bring copies of the Constitution and butt babies with us.
Please don't. Not the butt babies.
I can't hear one more time.
University of Virginia.
Oh yeah, we want to go to the University of Vagina too. We just had a conversation about that.
Francis.
Mia,
Yes.
yes,
Okay. All right.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you've done Spectrum Street epistemology with Francis.
On Parliament Hill, we did
Awesome.
we did it on Parliament Hill. We went to the Pride flag raising ceremony. The Prime Minister was
Awesome.
raising the Pride flag, and Francis and I were we were live streaming and doing our own little commentary of it. And then people behind us got really angry because they said we were being hateful, and we didn't make any friends. But
Yeah, Francis is great. She's done some great work. So Mia, you're always welcome on the show. We really appreciate your courage. We appreciate your work. We think you're fantastic. Our audience loves you. We love you. And sincerely, thank you so much for what you're doing. And, you know, it's when you meet these detransitioners, when you meet these people and they realize the unbelievable mistake they made by having their penis and testicles removed, and you know, they're trying to have intimate romantic relationships, and they're obviously deeply traumatized. And just thank you for what you do. Like, truly thank you for what you do.
thank you. Thanks for having me on again.
All right, everybody, we'll talk to you later. I'll be on tour this month. I think 4 or 5 colleges left. I'll be at Berkeley for the last Turning Point event. I'll be in Alabama, and then we're going to LA for a while to do some events, and then we're going to Paris to do some events. So and then we're going back to New Zealand and Bratislava, and we got a whole bunch of places where we're going to go. So we're pretty excited about that. But thank you very, very much, Mia. You are wonderful. Keep your tab open, and we'll see everybody later. And thanks again to Reed for all he does.
Thank you.